Warning. Failure to secure this container properly could result in a compromised server.
This is Guacamole, and in this video I'm going to explain what it is, how to set it up, and a couple of different ways to use it. But first, a quick message from today's video sponsor. YourCDKey.com is a great place to get Windows 10 keys at incredibly low prices. So here we are on the Microsoft Windows 10 Pro page, and right here you can see the current price is $20.05. But if you use the coupon code that's in the description down below, you'll get it even cheaper. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here and click apply. And now our new total for Windows 10 Pro is about 15 bucks. Now I have the option to go ahead and view the keys right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Then I'll click on get the key. And then I'm going to come over here, and right there you can change the product key. So go ahead and click on that. I'm going to go ahead and change the product key right here. So I've entered my key and I'll click next. Then I'll click on activate. And here we can see that Windows is activated. Next, what we want to do is go ahead and validate the key installation, and right there you can see the Windows 10 Professional Edition is permanently activated. So head on over to YourCDKey.com to get your next Windows 10 Pro key at ridiculously low prices. So, as I mentioned, this is Guacamole, and I've been using it for a while to manage certain things on my network, different servers, different desktop environments, and things like that. And here recently I was in Discord chatting with some people, and it was brought to my attention that the version I was using, which was the oznu version, actually hasn't been updated in 10 months, as you can see right there, and in fact is no longer being supported. So I decided for security reasons to switch over to the official Guacamole container, and then ran into some issues. Luckily, though, I did manage to find this blog post written by Nicholas over at techblog.jepson.org that was written back in March. And like he says right here, Apache Guacamole is an awesome HTML5 remote access gateway. Unfortunately, it can be very frustrating to set up. And boy, I'll tell you, I really did experience a lot of frustration in trying to get it set up. However, they have Docker images that are supposed to make that process easier, but I still ran into a lot of problems. Now, when I'm saying that, I am reading what he said, but I'm also saying that I also experienced a lot of problems. However, Docker Compose exists, and that does make it easier to set up. And luckily, there was somebody who was nice enough to put together a Github repository that we're going to clone and deploy that way using command line. Now, you could probably go through the process of setting this up through Portainer or Casa OS or Yacht or whatever, but for the sake of keeping things simple and straightforward, for this video, we are going to use SSH to deploy Guacamole on our system. So if we come over to here, here you can see that everything is listed out right here as far as commands are concerned, but let's actually jump over to that GitHub repository so we can see what's going on here. Now, the first thing that I want to mention is that this repository is not an official Guacamole repository. It's not, but, and you can actually see that right up here in the URL, in the breadcrumbs up here, in the title. It's all over the place. This is not an official Guacamole repository. However, if we actually come in here and look at the Docker Compose file right here, he's got a ton of great notes in here. I say he. Whoever created this repository has a lot of great notes in here that explain step by step what's going on. And what we want to do is actually scroll down until we get to this part right here, where we can see that under services in our Docker Compose, we are using the official Guacamole image right here. This is guacamole/guacd. If we scroll down a little further to Guacamole here, the official image is listed right there under guacamole/guacamole. And then even further down, there is an official Nginx container as well. Now, you don't have to use the Nginx container. It is just an additional thing that you can do. In fact, it even shows here that if you decide not to use this portion right here, you can remove this, uncomment this, and deploy it that way. However, using the Nginx container also allows us to install self-signed certificates on the server for a little extra layer of security. So that's what we're going to do in this setup. Is we're going to go ahead and use the Nginx we're going to use the Nginx container as a proxy so that we can also install self-signed certificates locally. So before we get too much further into this, let's actually take a look at what Guacamole is and what it does. So, like I said, here we are. We're on Guacamole's, or the homepage that I've got set up on my Guacamole server. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is that I hate the interface, the aesthetic of the interface. The interface is fine. It's the aesthetic that I hate. It is blinding white, and even going through the settings over here, like so. So here we've got active sessions. This will show any of the active sessions that are currently going on. You know, who's doing it, when they started doing it, where they're doing it from, those sorts of things. The history, you can see that I've been doing all kinds of stuff in here, and again, it gives all of that same information, historically speaking. Anyway, here we've got next we've got users. I've just got one user in here. No groups, don't need them for my simple setup. Connections, we are going to take a look at connections here, and then preferences. Here you can make some changes to that sort of thing. But what we're going to notice is there's no way to change this to a dark theme. So luckily, I have a script called Stylish, where I have created my own pretty crappy dark mode theme so that we can not be blinded by a white background. So basically, here you can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 connections set up. I've got 2 AdGuard servers. The demo server is the one that we're going to do all of this on. Jarvis is my Synology device. My NPM, that is for Nginx Proxy Manager and Athelia and all of those sorts of things. And then I've also got a Windows 10 set up in here, and I will show how to use Windows 10 as well, or Windows in general, how to remotely connect to Windows 10 or Windows through Guacamole here. So basically, it works like this. Once you've got your connections set up, you can then just click it and give it a second, and now we're logged in as that user. We didn't have to put any usernames or passwords or any of that kind of stuff in there. It just automatically connected because we set up our connection to do that. Once we're done here, we can just type in exit, oops, like so, and then it will pop up a window saying, hey, do you want to go to the home page? Do you want to try to reconnect, or do you want to log out? I'm just going to click on home, because then it will take us back to here. And again, we can do the same thing here. Again, we're logged in just that quickly. This is super, super handy for remotely managing multiple services, multiple servers, that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on exit again. And then it's going to pop up this window, and we can click home. And then just for the sake of demonstration here, we're going to use Guacamole to RDP, or remote desktop, into a Windows 10 instance. So I'll go ahead and click on that. We'll give this just a second. There is my setup there, and here we are. We're on a Windows 10 setup inside of Guacamole here, where we can do basically whatever we want to do. So let's go ahead and pop this open. This is a the connection speed that we're seeing here is not because of Guacamole. It's actually a direct result of the lowest specs that I gave this VM. So let's just come over here and go to fast.com. Like so, and here we can see that we're getting a decent connection speed. Everything is working just as we would expect it to. So let's go ahead and close this browser window here. And then, of course, like I said, you can come in here and just manage this as though you were on that desktop using remote desktop through Windows. So we've taken a look at what it looks like to do an SSH into a server, or a couple of servers in this case. We've also taken a look at connecting to a Windows device using remote desktop, or remote desktop protocol, RDP. So now let's actually take a look at how to set all of this up. We're going to install Guacamole, and then we'll set up our connections so that we can access these devices much more easily. As I mentioned, we are going to use Guacamole through this whole process here, just to kind of give a demonstration of how easy it is to use. So like I said, we want to do this on our demo server that we've got set up right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I'm going to go ahead. In fact, down here in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that I have a pop-up window down here. And that is because instead of exiting that Windows RDP session, normally, I guess, though the proper way, or maybe in this way there is no proper way, because what I did was I just came up to the toolbar, and on my mouse I clicked the back button, and what it did was take me back to my list of other devices. And then I logged into here, and now we can see that I've got this Windows 10 down here. And what's cool is I can just toggle back and forth between them, which is super, super handy to do when you need to. However, I'm just going to go ahead and close that like so. Okay, so here we are. We're on my terminal's login. Like I've already logged in. We're at our root here. So what I'm going to do is just an ls, just to get an idea of where we are. We're in the home directory of this user. So what I'm going to do is do a cd / home. And then here we can see all of the different things that I have currently up and running in this server, or Possibly. It's what I've had running in this server, not necessarily what's currently running in this server. So what we want to do, what I like to do for each of these is actually create a folder to clone into or to install into, those sorts of things. So what I want to do is do an mkdir for make directory, and then I'm going to call this, I'm just going to call this guac, like so. And I also want to, I also want to do and then I want to, once that's done, I want to cd into guac just so that we don't have to type it later. And now we've created and changed directories into that guac directory. The next thing that we want to do is actually come over to here, and we want to just run this first command. Now this is git clone and then this GitHub repository that we're on right now. So I'm going to right click and click copy. And then we're going to come over to here and I'm going to just right click like so. Now there's a possibility that you will get an error if you haven't already installed Git that said that Git isn't installed. And in order to install Git, you can just do sudo apt install Git and hit enter, and we're already on the newest version, so we don't need to do anything there. But that's, if you get an error saying Git isn't installed, that's all you've got to do. So we're in our guac directory. Let's do an ls, and here we've got a guacamole docker compose folder. So we're going to do cd space, and then we can just hit tab at that point, and it will autofill that. And then we've got this. We've got a few different files in here. In fact, this will be the same files that are listed up here. We've just cloned these files. So we've taken care of the first two steps, actually. We've cloned the repository, and we've changed directories in that repository. So the next thing we want to do is actually execute this prepare.sh script. Now, we took a look at that script already, where we can... Oh, that's the reset script, not with the prepare script. Again, this is the one where we're going to initialize the database and then install the self-signed certificates. If you're not comfortable trusting what this says right here, you can then again do a nano prepare.sh. And here you can see exactly what's going on in there as well. I am just going to leave everything default for the sake of this setup, but you definitely could come in here and change your email address in here if you wanted to change this to, you know, mydomain.local or whatever the case is, and then hit Control O and enter and Control X. So now we've got our screen cleared, and what we want to do is a /prepare.sh and hit enter. So now it's going to go through the process of creating the init.SQL file, and we have gone ahead and installed the self-signed certificates based on the criteria in that prepare.sh file. So if we come back over to here and come back a page, so now we've done these three. Now we've done three. We're 75% of the way there. So the next thing we want to do is docker compose up-d. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Come back over to here. We'll go ahead and just paste that in there. Now, I've already downloaded all of these images just to kind of speed up this process, but your system will have to download most likely the Guacamole container, the guacd container, as well as the Nginx container in order to deploy these. Here we can see that it's completed 3 of the 4 containers. There we go. Now we have all 4 of our containers up and running, should be ready to go. But let's go ahead and take a look at our Portainer instance, just so we can take a look at the logs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 192.168.69.106.9000. And here we are. We're logged in. Come over to here. We'll go to our containers. And here we can see that all of we've got Nginx Guacamole Compose, Postgres, Guacamole Compose, and then Guac Compose down here. Now, my experience is that this guacd compose takes a while to start, like almost a frustrating amount of time to start. So give this a few minutes to start up and do its thing before you get too frustrated and throw your hands up and walk away. It will take a few minutes to install, so just hang out and wait for that. You will want to just periodically refresh the page, and here we can see it's still starting. So we'll come back once this is ready to go. So here we are a few minutes later, about 4 or 5 minutes later, actually, and here we can see that everything is up and running. None of this is in starting mode or status or anything. So what we want to do next is actually click this 8443 over here, and it's going to throw an error. So what we want to do is actually come back to our address bar and add HTTPS to the beginning of that, like so. And then it's going to say, hey, your connection is not private. So we're going to say, click on advanced, we're going to say proceed, and then we're presented with a login screen here. So what we want to do is come back over to here, And in fact, if we go into this Docker Compose file that we were given, we can see that the username right here, the initial login to Guacamole is guacadmin and guacadmin. So we're going to go ahead and log in with that like so. And the first thing that I recommend doing for security purposes is coming up to guacadmin on the top right, clicking on settings, going to users, creating a new user, and give it username and password just like you would expect. You can do this, and then we can decide what kind of account restrictions we want to set up here. I'm just going to do this real quick, like so. I don't want to modify any of this other stuff. I don't want to lock myself out of this. For permissions, I do want to make myself a system administrator. I want to be able to create new users. I want to create new user groups, new connections, new connection groups, new sharing profiles, and I want to be able to change my own password. So once I've got all of that set up, I can click save. And then now that we can see we have both of our user accounts here, what I want to do is actually log out of guacadmin and log in as the user that I just created, and then go back over here to settings, go to users, and remove this guacadmin default user account just for security reasons. We're going to say delete and delete. And here we go. Now we just have our one user account. So at this point, we have set up Guacamole on our server so that we can then start adding accounts and other devices, other connections, things like that to our Guacamole setup. So let's take a look at how to do that next. So when you first log in to Guacamole, this is what it's going to look like, and it's not pretty. There's nothing there. So what you'll do is you'll come up to the top right, you'll click on settings, then you'll click on connections, and then right here we can set up new connections or groups. I'm just going to set up a new connection here. I'm going to call this AdGuard 1, and the location is fine. We don't need to change the location there. Our protocol in this case is going to be SSH because that's how I manage that particular server. So maximum number of connections. I would set this number fairly low. 1, I wouldn't do 1. I do 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. I typically do 5 on here just in case I do something stupid, so I can get back in. Below that, what we want to do, we're not going to do load balancing for a basic setup. So this one, we don't need to deal with. Guacamole proxy parameters. If you need to run a proxy, you can do that. But what we want to focus on is the parameters below where we've got network and authentication. The host name will be in this case, the IP address. It could be the domain name, but for the sake of this, it's going to be the IP address of the server that I'm trying to connect to. So I'm going to type in 192.168.1.26. On the port, I believe I've got it on 2234. The public host, Keybase, we're going to skip. Username will be Pi, I believe, for that one, like so. And then if you've got SSH keys, you can put that information down here. The display, you can change. You can disable copying and pasting. You can execute commands. You can set time zones. There's a lot of different stuff in here that you can do that I don't have any use for. You very well may. And I encourage you to explore those options. But again, for the sake of just setting up an SSH login, I don't need any of that stuff. So, I will also say that if you wanted to, you could record the screen. So if you've got other people on your network or on your Guac server, you could record what they're doing so that you can go back and take a look at that later and kind of maybe they screwed something up and you want to be able to see what they screwed up. You want to see what they typed. That sort of thing you can absolutely do with this. We're not going to set that up, but you absolutely could. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save. And then here, if you click that, it just brings you back into the settings area. So let's go back. We're going to come back up to here. We're going to click on home, and then we're going to click on AdGuard 1. And if everything worked correctly, now we're logged in. And from here, again, you can do, basically whatever you want to do. It's all set up and ready to go, and you can just manage your server via SSH. Now, here is where that warning at the beginning of this video came in, where it said, warning, failure to secure this container properly may result in a compromised server. And that's something that you really need to be aware of. Make sure that your user account that you are using to log into this is secured. Make sure it's not, the same password that you use for all of your other stuff. This is really one of those cases where you will want to add an extra layer of security by changing your password specifically for this setup. So look, I'm just as guilty as any of you out there about using the same password across all of my internal stuff. Also, if you want to make this available through a domain name using a reverse proxy, whether it's Traffic or Nginx Proxy Manager or Caddy or whatever you're using for your reverse proxy, make sure that you add additional security to that as well. So whether you're using Nginx Proxy and you're using access lists, that would be a great way to start on this. I would also encourage using Authelia as an additional layer of protection with this as well. Do everything you can to extra special secure this particular container, because it will give access to whatever you attach to it on your network. So just be cautious of that. Let's go ahead and come back to here. We're going to type in exit just so we can get out of here. And then again, we're going to get to this screen. I'm going to click on home. And then what I want to do next is actually show you how to set up an RDP or a remote desktop on Windows. So what we're going to do is click on connections. We're going to add a new connection. We're going to call this Win10. And then we're going to switch the protocol to RDP. Again, you can connect via Kubernetes, RDP, SSH, Telnet, and VNC. Again, we're just going to cover RDP and SSH in this, but we've already covered SSH. That one was easy. We're going to set up the maximum number of connections. And then what we want to do is actually come down again to the parameters here. For the network host name, that's going to be the IP address of the Windows computer that you're trying to connect to. This is one of those cases where setting up a static IP for your devices on your network is super handy. If you're using DHCP, that's fine. However, just know that if your IP address changes, this will fail to connect in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my IP address, like so, and then the port for RDP is 3389, and then the authentication for that particular device, we're going to give it a name, and then we're going to give it a password, and then we're going to ignore the certificate, the server certificate here. Now, it seems weird that we're putting it here instead of in the remote desktop gateway. However, I've just found that this works better for me. I tried using the remote desktop gateway. It just wouldn't work. By switching it over to these first two options here, I've had success time after time after time setting it up that way. Now, here's the thing that we need to take into consideration for remotely connecting to a Windows computer. And that is that the remote Windows computer needs to have two criteria met. The first is that the account that you want to log into has to have a password. So you'll need to make sure that your user has an account password to log in to the desktop. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you need to make sure the remote desktop is available on the setup. So let's actually take a look at that now. So let's come over to here. Let's just refresh. Oops. We'll just say exit, and we'll go to home, and then we're going to go into Windows 10 just so we can kind of see what we're doing here. Get logged in here, and then so we're going to go ahead and open up my account settings for that user. And again, this is one of those changes, or one of those things where you will want to go over here to sign in options, and then make sure that you have a password set up on here. I've got, sign in with your account's password, and yep, your password is all set up on Windows apps and devices. If you want to, you can change it, or if it's not already in there, you'll have the opportunity to go ahead and add a Windows password. The other thing that you need to do is come down here to start, type in remote desktop, remote. Let's actually look at settings. Allow remote connections to this computer is what you're looking for right there. So go ahead and click on that. And then in here, make sure that remote desktop is set up and ready to go in there. And right now, it's not giving the option to change that because I am already RDP'd into this computer. So you will want to make sure that you go in here and turn on allow remote connections to this particular computer. Once you've got all of that, then you can actually come over here and set all of this up. So what we're going to do, scroll all the way down to the bottom, click on save. Then we're going to come up here, click on home, and then we'll click on Win10. Give this just a second, and hopefully, there we go. Now, I will say, it also kicked me out of this because it's Windows. You can only be connected to the desktop one time through either a direct connection or RDP. Of course, if you're using a different application, you can share desktops and things like that, but that's not what we're doing here. So here we are, we're back on our desktop, and we can continue to operate this as though we were sitting at it with a mouse and keyboard and monitor plugged into it. So there are the basics of setting up and using Guacamole on your server. Again, if you want to make this available to the internet, make sure that you add additional security to this, whether it's through access lists, VPN, Athelia, whatever the case is. Don't just let this sit open and bare to the internet. It's a really bad idea, especially if you've got your main Docker server, your main whatever. If you've got anything attached to this, make sure that it is as secure as you can possibly make it. So this is something that's been requested time and time again for the last year or so. And honestly, I'm mad that I didn't look into this sooner. This is going to save me so much time being able to just log into things and take care of things and update things, that sort of thing. Also, being able to do this remotely when I'm away from home, when I'm out doing stuff, if I'm traveling, visiting somewhere else, whatever, and I need to log into my server to make some changes or see what's going on, being able to do this is super, super handy. So I really do hope that this video was helpful to those people who are interested in using Guacamole and have had a hard time getting it set up properly and securely. Of course, if you've got other ideas for videos that you'd like to see, leave that in the comment section down below. A lot of the content that I create actually comes from your suggestions. So I really do appreciate when you guys leave those suggestions in the comment section down below. Also, just a quick reminder, note, whatever, after the end of this year, the end of 2021, I will be doing away with YouTube memberships on the channel. It adds an unnecessary layer of complication to what I'm trying to do and share content and all of those sorts of things. So if you are a channel member and would like to continue to support the channel, head on over to Patreon, where you can become a patron over there and get early access and engage with me there as well if you'd like to do that. There is also a link in the description. It is https dbte.ch, where you'll find a new modified little landing page that I created with links to all of my social medias, as well as different ways that you can support the channel financially, whether it's through Coffee or PayPal. I actually put up a Bitcoin link in there as well if you want to do that. All of that will be available in the description down below as well. I want to give a big shout out to my existing patrons. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. I really do appreciate you guys. It really does help me continue to pay the bills and that sort of thing. So I think, though, with all of that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. So as always, thanks for your time. I always appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you in the next video.